Now we'll talk about the way we actually execute the choice of a method for a given item. We call that a forecasting tournament because we allow the various methods that might be useful to duke it out and to fight for the right to own that item and to make the forecast for that item. And this involves a purely empirical, very computational analysis of the demand data. So we'll imagine that you have, starting with the demand history of an item. So that's your empirical basis. This is the way the item has behaved over time. And then you have forecasting method number 1 and forecasting method number 2. And let's say there's 3. Forecasting method number 3. So those are all competitors to forecast a particular item. Demand history of item, let's say it's item number 7. So we take that demand history and we feed it into the calculations for method 1 and for method 2 and for method 3 in turn. And then what we have, as we said before, is we have separately held out some of the demand history. That's our so-called holdout data set. We're going to use that as the ground truth. This is what actually happened at the end of the demand history that we're using as input. And so this is going to be our ground truth, and we're going to make a set of forecasts. Forecast method number 1, and we have a set of forecasts for method number 2 and forecasts for method number 3. And each of these would be compared to provide us an estimate of the error that you would get using this method on item number 7. And likewise, we're going to be doing the same thing. Estimated error, we'll call this number 2. This is number 1. And we'll have the estimated error for method number 3. And this is the score that each of these methods gets. It's a forecast of the forecast error. And these are all competing. And we compare this and we pick the best, which is to say the lowest average error. And that determines which of these methods handles item 7. Then we move on to item 8 and item 9 and item 10. Basically, that's the way this works. There's a little bit of refinement because these methods actually have knobs or parameters in them, so they're variations of each method. But this is the big picture. Start with some of the demand history, hold out some to see the actual accuracy assessment. Try each of the methods on the demand history, make the forecasts, and compare them to the actuals. Compute a summary measure of error, the average absolute error, in other words, ignoring whether the sign is positive or negative, and then pick the best, and then move on to the next item. Repeat the whole process. So this is very computationally expensive, but that doesn't matter anymore. It didn't even matter back in the mid-'80s when we invented this technique and first began selling it in software. So that is the overall architecture of a forecasting tournament. There is still a choice about which methods you're going to allow to compete, and of course you have to decide which items you care about forecasting, but those are easy choices to make.